Hello, welcome back to my channel. You're watching What Helen Reads and I'm Helen, and if you're watching this on the day that this is going up, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And if you don't celebrate Christmas, I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic Monday. So today I have got my December reading wrap up for you. So it's not quite the end of December yet, but because of the holiday season, I'm not going to get a lot more reading done in now before the end of the year. And I also wanted to make sure that I got time to record my December reading wrap up as well as my Q4 reading wrap up before I start talking about my favourites of 2023. So I'm recording this a little bit early. It's currently the 23rd of December. I'm hoping to get this edited later today and up onto YouTube, ready to go live on Christmas Day. And then the Q4 wrap up will follow on Thursday, and then on the following Monday, which will actually be New Year's Day, I will hopefully get up for you my favourite reads of 2023. Okay, so like I said, I have recorded this early, but also because it's been December, I've been very busy. I've been spending a bit more time with friends and family, and also spending a bit more time watching Christmas movies on the telly. So I haven't read as many books as normal, but I've still got 9 to share with you today. As always, I'm going to start with the stats. So in total, I've read 9 books up to the 22nd of December, which was a total of 3,520 pages, which averaged out about 160 pages per day. So that's not too far off the mark in terms of what I normally read. In terms of how I read them, I read 6 books via Kindle Unlimited, 2 audiobooks and 1 ARC. And then in terms of my star ratings, I gave 1 3-star this month, 5 4 stars and 3 5-star reads. So I'm really excited that I found a couple more 5 stars this month as well. In terms of the genres, I had 5 mafia romances, 2 dark romances, 1 Omega verse and 1 MC romance. So as normal, the majority of the books I read were dark romance in some way, and again the majority mafia romances. So let's get stuck in then. The first book I finished in December was King by S.G. Tilley, and this one was book 2 of the Alliance series, and I've been loving this series so far. This one I gave 4 stars, and in this one we're following King and Savannah. Now, we'd met King in book 1 because he is one of the leaders of the Alliance. And he is also a billionaire. He's a businessman, but he's basically a secret leader of the Alliance. And the Alliance is this sort of mafia group. They took out all of the other families in the area and now have created this kind of like mixed mafia alliance, basically, hence it's called the Alliance. So they kind of mopped up all of the loyal people from the other mafia groups. Now at the start of this one we meet Savannah, who's our heroine, and she has been dating this person for a couple of dates, and she's now on her 3rd date with him. He's not particularly a great person though, and she's very much thinking that she's going to call it quits and this will very much be the last date. But she is due to go and see her friend. Her friend's recently had an accident, so she's taken over like a casserole to her friend, going to have dinner with her, and this new kind of boyfriend tags along. So when they actually get there and they walk inside, they are actually then confronted by King and his sister, and it turns out that the boyfriend that she's brought to see her friend is actually the husband of King's sister, and so basically his brother-in-law has been having an affair. Now King takes great offence to this because he is a very protective brother, and also he's never particularly liked his sister's husband, and he's been a bit dodgy. So the sister asks him to do a bit of investigation, look into him, and he finds out that he's actually been collecting evidence against the Alliance, and he's hoping to turn them into the police. So of course King takes retribution, not only for the fact that he's been sleeping around behind his sister's back, but also for being disloyal to the Alliance, and he goes to exact the appropriate punishment. The thing is, Savannah is returning to this guy's apartment because she's left her car keys there and she needs to get herself home, and she walks in on King doing what he needs to do to the brother-in-law. And so then Savannah tries to run and King runs after her and then basically kidnaps her, and now he's trying to figure out a way to keep her alive and keep her quiet so she doesn't tell anyone what she's seen. And he decides the best course of action is to force her into a marriage. So then we're basically in this forced marriage scenario where they're now forced to be together, and their relationship goes from there. So I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Savannah is also an artist, so obviously King, you know, sets up an art studio for her and everything at his property, and eventually, as they're in close proximity, they develop a relationship together, and other things happen in the plot, so we get a bit of suspenseful elements with this one as well. And then after that I'll move straight on to read Dom by S.J. Tilley, and this one we're following Val and Dominic, and Val is King's half sister. So they share a father basically, but Val had a different mother, and she very much had a very different life to King. King's been brought up in a very affluent family. He comes from money, and now of course he's part of the alliance, but Val's mother was not that great. She was abusive towards Val, and as a result she lacks a lot of confidence about herself and her place in the family, and really questions whether or not King has any real affection for her, and she really sort of struggles with that. And as we go through the book we uncover a lot more about what's happened to Val in her past and have a lot of sympathy for her as a person and what she's been through. And then the hero in this one is Dom, and Dom is the head of the mafia in Chicago, and he desperately is wanting to join the alliance because he's got some baddies after him, and they're going after his family, and members of his family are turning up unalive. And so Dom is very much needing the alliance support so that he can, you know, overcome his enemies basically and make sure that his family is safe. And so he hatches a bit of a plan where he's going to seduce Val, get her to fall in love with him, and then basically force her into a marriage. And this does happen because Val is easily kind of swayed and persuaded. This very, very handsome man is being extremely nice to her, showering her with a lot of compliments, giving her lots of confidence, and she absolutely starts to fall head over heels in love with Dom. And when she gets an opportunity to meet up with him in Vegas, she takes it, and while she's there they both get drunk. Seemingly they both get drunk, and they end and when they wake up they find out that they are married. And the thing is, it turns out that Dom is actually tricking her this whole time, and obviously he's tricked her into this marriage. And then when he goes to tell the family that he's married her and therefore he's got his in with the alliance, she realizes that he hasn't really cared about her at all, and gets very upset about this obviously, and this shakes her confidence even more. The thing is, Dom did start off with this intention, but over time, as he gets to know her, obviously he starts to develop feelings for her. But at the end of the day, loyalty to his family and making sure his family are safe are his top priorities. But I absolutely love this one, I have to say. From the moment I picked it up right to the end, it had me smiling. Dom is massively over the top. Even though he sort of tricked Val in a way, he's one of those sorts of heroes where he gives the heroine really no choice. He does some wild and crazy things. Not only has he drugged her in order to marry her, when she throws her wedding ring out of the window, he forces her to get a tattoo to replace the wedding ring, and does various other things that are completely over the top and crazy and would not be acceptable in a normal relationship, in normal life. But I absolutely gold this one up because it was just so wild and wacky, and I couldn't help myself but give this one a 5-star just because I enjoyed this one so much. Like I said, I was smiling throughout, and Dom was such an over-the-top crazy hero, but so in love with Val by the end that I forgave him for what he did, and yeah, just absolutely loved it. I'm really looking forward as well to Hans coming out at the end of the month. It's out, I believe, on the 28th of December, so just a few more days away, and I'll be picking that one up as soon as I have time for it in my schedule, because I'm very intrigued by Hans as well. So watch this space. I'll probably be in my January reading wrap up for you. Then I went on to read Siren by Misha. This has been on my TBR for a couple of months, and it was one of the ones that I wanted to get to before the end of the year. It's book 5 in the Ever After series, and it's a Little Mermaid retelling. Now, I normally really love fairy tale retellings, especially if they're dark romances, and I've really enjoyed some of the other books in this series. However, unfortunately, this one didn't 100% work for me, and I only rated it 3 stars. It's an MMF Little Mermaid retelling, and so we're following Bastian, Garrick and Ariella. And in this one, essentially what happens is that Ariella is the daughter of kind of a bad man. He has got a sister who is sort of evil, and his daughter is not allowed to go anywhere near her. One day her father wants her to marry this other guy, and she doesn't want to do it. And her aunt, this evil aunt, persuades her to do her a little favour in exchange for some cash so she can escape from her father, go and pursue her dreams of being a singer. But in return, all she has to do is a little tiny favour and exchange a package for her. Now, when she kind of disappears, she ends up in Garrick's club trying to make this sort of like this handover, this deal for her aunt. Garrick spots her straight away and sort of says, you know, who are you here to meet? You shouldn't be here. This is not the sort of place for you. Ariella says, none of your business, mind your own business. I'm doing this deal, I'm doing it as a favour to my aunt. And then basically Bastian turns up, and Bastian is one of her father's men, a bit of a bodyguard for her. She's known him all her life. And it turns out that Bastian and Garrick used to be friends, and they've often shared ladies together, and they decide that they're going to take Ariella under their wing, figure out what she's doing, figure out what the aunt is doing, but ultimately they start a 3-way relationship with each other. Now, the reason this didn't work for me is because Bastian has been Ariella's sort of bodyguard. He's her father's, you know, sort of one of her father's men for a while, and she's only ever known him to be look down on her and be quite mean to her, and he's supposed to have had feelings for her, and he really, you know, finds her attractive, wanted to be with her and all of that. And when they start their relationship, and this particularly with the relationship with Bastian and Garrick, I really didn't buy that he was actually in love with her, and I didn't ever really get any feelings that she ever had any interest in him either until they kind of forced into this situation. And I didn't really see any progression in their kind of actual romance or their story. I mean, it's a dark romance. There's a lot of, you know, dubious consent scenes in this one. The men are, you know, fairly aggressive in that manner, and normally that absolutely does not bother me if it's done it in the right way, but in this one I just didn't feel there's any build up to their relationship or any reason why she would, you know, go along with what they were kind of asking of her, and I just unfortunately didn't feel the connection between them. So it wasn't terrible. Like I say, I've enjoyed the other books in this series, so I'm glad that I read it. But I think it was probably the weakest story out of the series so far. Then I decided I wanted a bit of a comfort read. I was doing a bit of driving for work, and I had to pick a new audiobook, but I just wanted a bit of a comfort read. I was going through a bit of a, you know, a bit of an anxious period, you know, finalising things at work for the end of the year, but also coming up to Christmas and doing lots of other things. And so I just thought to myself, I just want something that I know I'm absolutely going to love and enjoy. So I decided to reread, but listen to it on audiobook, Ruthless Creatures by J.T. Geissinger. And this is a special edition copy I've got here that's actually been signed by J.T. Geissinger, but sent to me by Jen from the Book Refuge. This is book 1 in the Queens and Monsters series. I've talked about this many times on my channel. I absolutely love this series overall, and this is one of my favourite books of the series. It's narrated by Troy Duran, Brooke Daniels and Michelle Sparks, and they do an absolutely fantastic job. And in this one we're following Natalie and Cage. So Natalie is our heroine, and the premise of this one is that she had a fiance. She was due to get married, and the day before her wedding her fiance goes missing and is presumed dead. Now, she has spent 5 years in a very great state of mourning. She just can't move on. They never found a body, they don't really know what happened to him, and so she has never been able to fully come to terms with the fact that he's dead. However, 5 years have now passed, and in the state where she lives, if you've been missing for 5 years, you are now presumed dead. So she kind of has to kind of confront this horrible truth that her fiance is never coming back. And so she goes out with her best friend Sloane. Sloane is the heroine from book 2, is a fantastic character. And they have a lot to drink. She takes her wedding dress finally to a charity shop to get rid of it, and attempts to, you know, move on, get through the day, basically, get through the 5th anniversary of her fiance's disappearance. Now, on the same night, a mysterious man happens to be at the bar, and that is Cage. He's very dark, he's very brooding, he oozes a sense of danger, but he's also very, very magnetic, very, very handsome. And everyone is wondering who this guy is. Well, it turns out he's Natalie's new next door neighbour. He's just bought the house next door to her, and they have a bit of banter between them. A couple of scenarios happen where they kind of like bump into each other mysteriously, and ultimately she starts a relationship with Cage. The thing is, Cage is second in command of the Russian mafia and is essentially acting head because the head of the mafia is currently in prison, and he has been sent to Natalie because it turns out her fiance wasn't as squeaky clean as she thought. He has previously done some dealings with the mafia and he owes them a lot of money, and Cage was sent to find out what she knew about the disappearance of the fiance, see if they could track this money down. And so you can start to see that as Cage builds this relationship with Natalie, he's hiding this terrible secret about the fiance, and as events unfold, she starts to realise what's going on. And I don't want to give any more away than that, because I really think if you haven't read this, I really think you should read it to find out what's happened. But all I will say is that Cage is an absolutely fantastic character. He's one of my favourite Russian mafia heroes of all time. He's absolutely delicious, so would highly recommend not only the book but the audiobook for this one as well if you haven't listened to it yet. And incidentally, that is a 5-star read, so that is one of my 5-star reads for the month. Then I went straight on to another 5-star read, and that was God of Fury by Rina Kent, and it's book 5 in the Legacy of the Gods series. So it's a dark sort of college romance, and is loosely kind of a mafia romance as well. And in this one we're following Brandon and Nikolai, so it's an MM romance. This series to date has been absolutely fantastic. I've really, really enjoyed every single book. I think Rina Kent has done a really, really good job of really making these very, very kind of dark sort of characters. But as we've gone through the book, there are friendship groups that she's established at these 2 rival colleges between the kind of the mafia kids and the British billionaire kids. And really, really got to know all of the characters in the friendship groups, and as they've developed relationships with each other, all of the books kind of overlaps in timelines, so basically all of their stories kind of happen in parallel. So the more books you read in the series, the more you get to know about the characters, the more clues that Rina Kent leaves, and we've known for a couple of books now that Brandon and Nikolai are basically having an affair with each other, and that this would ultimately be their book. I have to say it was absolutely the best book in the series so far. It was amazing to read. I still haven't fully come to terms with all of my thoughts around this book, because it was different in a way from the other books. Some of the other books in this series, the heroes have been psychopaths, and it's sort of like verging on sort of a bully romance style of books, lots of sort of dark themes. And then this one, there was absolutely dark themes, but I never felt that Nikolai or Brandon particularly bullied each other. They weren't forced or coerced into their relationship together. It just grew very organically. We know Nikolai has some manic tendencies. We've seen him a lot in the other books sort of fighting and also falling asleep in completely random places, and in this one we learn much more about that and his his mental health and the manic episodes that he experiences. And he does have medication for it, but he doesn't like to take the pills because he doesn't like the way he feels, or how he thinks and stuff after he's taken the pills, so he tries not to, and as a result he tries to channel some of that extra energy that he's got into sort of fighting and things like that, and that's where we've seen him quite a lot fighting in the ring and things. But he's had his eye on Brandon for a while, and Brandon is Landon King's twin brother, Seemingly he's been the perfect brother, you know, the good one, the nice one, where Landon was you know, a bit of a psychopath that we've seen before, and a bit of a baddie in the series up to the point of book 4. Brandon was much more the calmer one, the serene one, you know, he was the parents' favourite. His sister could really rely on him. And in this one we start to realise that Brandon isn't quite as squeaky clean as we think, and that he absolutely puts on this facade where he absolutely tries to be perfect. And in doing that, he has to really order and structure his day in a very rigorous way to keep himself in check, because really inside he's in turmoil. He's got a lot of anxiety, a lot of, again, mental health issues, and we find out some things that happened to him in his past that have meant that he needs you know, to have a lot of control over his life in order to kind of appear to be kind of quote unquote normal. And he's hiding a lot of really deep sort of emotions and pain from what happened to him in the past. Now, as he kind of like, you know, starts his relationship with Nikolai, he's forced to confront a lot of these things about his sexuality, but also what happened to him in the past. And I think Rina Kent did an absolutely amazing job here of tackling some very difficult topics, very challenging subject matter, but she did it in a really good way. She never rammed anything down your throat. You never felt that it was, you know, over the top or unnecessary. I think she dealt with it in a really clever way, and one that by the end of it, I thought their relationship between them was absolutely beautiful. I was rooting for them the whole way through, and like I said, it was so well written, so well done. I fell in love with these characters and had to absolutely give it 5 stars. One of the difficult topics I think she looked at quite well was Brandon's thoughts around his sexuality. So Nikolai has always been openly bisexual. We've seen him in other books, you know, having relationships with both men and women, sometimes together. So he's very open to sexual experiences. Brandon, on the other hand, has always believed that he's asexual. He's never been really attracted to other people, and he has had no interest in sex. But he's kind of had girlfriends just to keep up sort of appearances, if you like, and for people to think that, again, quote unquote, he is normal. So he's kind of repressed this part of him, and he hasn't really admitted to the fact that he very much sees himself as asexual. That is until he meets Nikolai, and then he kind of has a gay awakening, if you like, and he's confused at first, but then kind of like completely accepts the fact that he's attracted to Nikolai, and you know, Nikolai is the one for him. So again, I think this whole thing was done really well, very tastefully. It was really emotional. I won't lie, but I did shed a few tears, and I'm just so glad that they got their HEA. Now, one good thing in here as well is that we find out a bit more about the man in the white mask. So all the way through, there's been somebody, this character, the man in the white mask. When I found out that book 6 was the final book in the series and it was going to be Eli and Ava's story, I was a little bit surprised, because I thought we had legs for at least one more in the person we find out who is behind the white mask, and also Mia's twin sister Maya, because we've had some altercations with her and she may or may not have been having some sort of fling with kind of one of the sort of like the bodyguards. So I was thinking that she might have a story, but now I'm thinking maybe if this is the last one, there might be some spin-off and we go back to New York to see more of the Mafia, and Rina Kent's going to do some more of the Mafia, and we might get the White Mask story then. It seems weird that she'd breadcrumb him through and then not do a story on him. So I've got everything crossed for that, because I like a little bit of intrigue and to figure out who people are. So yeah, I hope something does come of that as well. But maybe we'll find out a little bit more about the White Mask guy in the next book. Okay, so after that, I got the opportunity to read an arc of Not So Silent Night by Marlo Roy, and this is a Christmas novella set in her After End series. Like I say, it's just a short novella. It's a really quick, fun read. I rated this one 4 stars, and we're following Rue and Sloane. And this is set in sort of the same community as the others in the After End series. So basically an apocalypse has happened on Earth. 100 or so years have passed, and now there are alphas, omegas, betas, and they're living in sort of like commune sort of communities. They've kind of lost technology, so it's kind of like more primitive living, if you like. Like I say, yeah, they're alphas, betas, and omegas. And in this one, Rue has been a omega for a while, but she was captured by some betas and held in a camp and used and abused basically in this camp until she is discovered by kind of hunters pack, and is rescued by an alpha called Sloane. The thing is, when Sloane rescues her, she's very scared of him. It's, you know, because she's been held captive and mistreated by these betas, and so she's quite scared of Sloane at first. Sloane instantly knows that she's his fated mate, and they should be together, but he doesn't want to scare her anymore. So he's been sort of standing back, standing away, but leaving her little gifts and little presents and things. And she doesn't know who they're from. She's like an artist, so he's been leaving her kind of like paper and pencils and things like that so she can draw. And basically we're now coming up to Christmas time, and they decide in the village that they're going to do a bit of a secret Santa, and she ends up picking Sloane for her secret Santa, and so she decides that she's going to draw him a picture for his present. And he is actually the stable master, so he looks after all the horses, and she decides that she's going to draw a picture of a horse. Now literally the night before they're supposed to swap presents, this picture is damaged, and so she's forced then to go in basically the day before the present wrapping to hide out in the stables to redraw this picture. The thing is, she thinks he's not in there, and he is, and then so she goes to hide, but he stays around for a while, and then eventually she falls to sleep, and when she wakes up they're snowed in. He discovers that she's there, one thing's lead to another, yeah, the story goes from there. So like I say, it was very short Christmas novella. I really enjoyed it. If you've read any of the books in the series, then I think you'll enjoy it too. It's set in the same world, and if you've not read any of Marlo Roy's Omegaverse before, but you like Omegaverse, then I would definitely give it a chance. So then after that I went on to read Sinful, Vows by Lillian Harris, and this is book 1 in the missing crime family. Yeah, it's a mafia romance. Now this has been on my TBR for a while, but I particularly picked this up now because I'm actually now part of her ARC team. I'm expecting an ARC copy of the 4th book in the series very soon, because it releases I think on the 8th of January, so it's due to the ARC team kind of any kind of day now. And she did recommend that even if you haven't read the other books in the series, you at least read book 3 before you read book 4. But I like to read things in order, so I decided that I had enough time to read all 3 books before I got the ARC, so I started with book 1. So this is book 1 in the Messina crime family. And it's a relationship between Michael and Elsie, and this is like a forced marriage, single dad sort of trope. So what we've got here is Elsie. She is I think something like 26, 27 years old at the start of this book, but she has been in captivity for about 9 years. After she'd finished school, before she went to college, her and 2 friends went on a road trip for their summer before they started college, and they were kidnapped by sex traffickers and then basically held captive for 9 years. And so she has been through some terrible traumatic events over the last 9 years, and one of her friends is now lost to them. They don't know what happened to her, they don't know if she is still alive, but one of her other friends that she is still basically with, and she's been held in the same place with, and she gets an opportunity one day to escape, and she decides that she's going to take it. Her friend is too scared to go with her though, so she promises that she'll get help and she'll come back for her friend. Now this opportunity to escape is via Michael. Now Michael is second in command of a mafia family in this city. Not anything to do with the sex trafficking, fortunately, but he happens to be at this house where she's being kept because he needs to speak to kind of like the rival family about something, and his car is left sort of on the drive, and she is able to sneak out of the window and hide in the back seat of his car, and then when he returns to his car and drives away, she ends up trapped in his house because he pulls straight into the garage and then goes into the house, and now she's kind of trapped in this garage part of his house. The thing is, he knew from the very beginning that she was in the back of his car. He wanted to see what she would do. But while she is still in the house, before he's like made any decisions about what he's going to do with her, he has also got a daughter who we later find out that isn't his biologically, but he saved her from a fire. Her parents died and therefore he adopted her. So he's kind of basically a single father to this little girl who's sort of 5 or 6 years old. And she happens to find Elsie hiding in this house, and she keeps a secret that Elsie is there. She doesn't tell her dad because she sees this lady and thinks that she looks really scared, and she doesn't want to give her location away. But anyway, Michael eventually confronts her and they're together, and he decides that he's going to hatch a plan. He needs to be married because he wants to take over for the mafia from his father, and his father's going to hand over the reins as long as he gets married. And so he decides he's going to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, essentially marry Elsie, force her into this marriage, and then he'll also have a mother for his daughter. So he kind of, and then he says to her, if you just married to me for a year, by the time I get my ducks in a row, I get to be head of the mafia, and then I will divorce you after a year and I'll let you have your freedom. And Elsie agrees to this, obviously, and she also tries to ask him for help for her friend. So after this, obviously lots of things go down, lots of plot points are kind of unravelled, lots of secrets are revealed, but ultimately this couple are now in close proximity together. They're obviously in this kind of arranged forced marriage, and their relationship goes from there. So I really enjoyed this one and gave it 4 stars. Then I went on to read book 2 in the series, which was Cruel Lies, also by Lillian Harris, and this one is a kind of forbidden romance between Raph, who is Michael's older brother, and Nicolette, who is Raph's sister-in-law. However, Raph's wife has recently died, and so he's a widow. But what essentially happens is that Raph is the eldest son, but he's not next in line for the mafia. Michael is, and the reason for this is because his dad absolutely despises him, and we don't know why he despises him so much, but he's decided that he absolutely does. Now, Raph has always been the enforcer for this mafia family, and kind of, you know, he's always fought against the fact that his dad doesn't give him the time of day, and tries to, you know, prove what a good mafia person he could be, but nothing he does satisfies his father. In the end, he meets this girl called Bianca. He doesn't really even love her, but he's with her for a while, and he eventually decides that he's going to leave her, but then she tells him that she's pregnant, and he decides to do the right thing and marry her. The thing is, Bianca completely lied to him. She wasn't pregnant at all, and then shortly after they got married, she claims that she loses the baby, and now he's stuck now in this kind of loveless marriage. Bianca, though, has a younger sister called Nicolette. Nicolette is really, really nice, really kind, really beautiful, and Raph kind of develops this friendship with her. On the flip side, Bianca, his wife, is very, very horrible, nasty, belittles her sister, takes every opportunity to pick on her sister, tell her horrible things, and technically is mentally abusing her. And Nicolette's parents don't stand up for her at all. They think Bianca is absolutely amazing and everything she does is fantastic. And Nicolette is also feeling very, very unloved by her family. So this is, Nicolette and Raph really have this kind of rapport sort of between them, because they understand how each other feels, because they don't have the love of their parents. And Nicolette therefore kind of develops this massive crush on Raph, but she's much younger than him. Because when this book starts, she's only a teenager, and after Raph marries her sister, she obviously gets older, and one day she attempts to kiss him, and then he realises that maybe he shouldn't have been so friendly with her, and kind of puts her at arm's length. And so they have kind of then this fraught relationship for the next couple of years, and then one day Nicolette is round at her sister's house, and she witnesses her sister being murdered, and the person that's killed her is Raph's father. Knowing that she's massively in danger, she kind of goes on the run and she disappears for a year. And meanwhile, Raph obviously has to deal with the fact that his wife has been killed. He doesn't know his father is the one that has done it, and he doesn't understand kind of what's going on. But he decides that even though he didn't love his wife, he absolutely needs to take revenge. He believed that the Irish mafia have done it, and so he kind of starts a war with the Irish mafia. And as a result, he kind of has to go into hiding, and Michaels tells him, look, go into hiding, I'll sort this mess out, we'll figure it all out. We know that our dad is bad. When I take over as head of the mafia, then I will get it all sorted. I'll do a deal with the Irish and then you can come back. The thing is then this kind of goes on for a year, and eventually Nicolette is caught and she is very much in danger of her life. Luckily someone intervenes, steps in, and then she's taken to RAF for safekeeping. So Michael takes Nicolette to RAF to say, right, you need to stay together now, you need to kind of keep each other alive. And now Nicolette and Raph find themselves in close proximity, and all those feelings they had between each other before start to resurface and they start to develop their relationship. Again, this one has a lot of secrets that are revealed, lots of twisty plot points and everything, and you know, until we get to the end. And so the storylines in these ones are very interwoven. Now, I did like this one, but only really would have given it 3.5. I've rounded it up to 4 stars. The reason for me is because I felt it wasn't very well paced. It was quite laggy in the middle, and it's quite a long book. So I felt that it could have been shorter. There was a lot of this back and forth between Nicolette and Raph, like, I want to be with you, but we can't be together, and I want to be with you, but we can't be together. And he held a lot of guilt because, you know, well, I'm much older than you, we can't be together. And I just felt it dragged on a little bit too much for my liking in that bit, because it was clear that they both really liked each other. And I don't think it needed necessarily to go on quite as long as it did. There was a lot of kind of repetitive scenes, if you like, through that middle portion before we kind of then got to the next part of the story and the rest of the plot started to unravel a little bit. But overall, I'm really enjoying the series, and I've already started on book 3. I was hoping I was going to finish it for this wrap up, but I'm only 14% of the way through, and I just don't think I'm going to have time to finish it, just because, you know, the next couple of days I've got lots of Christmassy things that I'm going to be doing. So then the last book that I finished this month, that I'm going to talk about today, is After the Fall by Giana Darling, and this is book 4 in the Fallen Men series. It's an MC romance between King and Cressida. Now, I had read books 1, 2 and 3. I really wanted to continue with the series, but I was stuck for a long time at reading book 4, and the reason was because we'd already seen King and Cressida in book 1. I really hate going back to couples that we've already seen, because I feel like we got the happy ever after, and now we know that some other drama is going to happen. They're going to have to go through a few more trials and tribulations before they get their happy ever after again, and I was really reluctant to do that. But also I knew that something had happened to Zeus. We know that something happened to Zeus, and I was very worried that he may even be unalive by the end of this story, because I'd kind of like tried to find out a little bit, like not like massively tried to find out what happened, but kind of read ahead for the other books, and Zeus was not mentioned at all, and I was like, what's going to happen to Zeus? I really don't know, and I was really kind of scared that this would be an emotional book that I didn't really want to read. So what I did was I took the wimp's way out, and I decided to go for the audiobook, because again I had a little bit of driving to do for work, and I thought it might be easier emotionally if I listened to the audiobook rather than actually reading this one myself. So that's what I did. I don't normally listen to audiobooks unless I've read the books before, but I jumped straight into this one, and it was narrated by Jacob Morgan, Savannah Peachwood and Jason Clark, and I think they did a really fantastic job. So thoroughly enjoyed this one, rated this one 4 stars. And without giving too much away, like I say, King and Cressida, we've got their happy ever after in book 1. Cressida was King's school teacher. She's about 8 years older than him, so it's kind of a reverse age gap. And as soon as they saw each other, they fell in love, and she was very prim and proper when she first met him, and obviously he turned her into a biker chick. So they had their romance. He finished school, they ended up going to college together. She became a university professor while he was at college, and now they're kind of back in entrance, and King is patching into the club, and Cressida is opening her bookshop in town, which was something that she's always wanted to do. So now she's opening up a bookshop in town. The thing is, at the end of book 3, Zeus is arrested for murder and he goes back to prison. And so at the start of this book, we know that Zeus is in prison. His wife Lulu, who we met in book 2, has just given birth to twins. And so the whole club obviously rally round to look after Lulu and the kids, but also try to find a way to get Zeus out of prison, because he's absolutely been set up for this murder that he didn't do. And the sort of like the police chief in town, Dana, he has been trying to get them for for years, and so the police force are now really harassing the whole of the fallen MC and doing lots of dastardly things. And because Zeus is now in prison, King has to kind of step up and become the head of the MC temporarily while his dad is in prison, and it's his responsibility then, the responsibility falls on him to try and save his dad, get him out of prison, but also save the club and get the police force off their backs. And so King makes this terrible plan that ultimately comes to fruition, and when it does, it's absolutely heartbreaking. There's a whole period of sort of like mourning in here, a lot of grief. So if that is a trigger for you, then I would steer away from this one, because Giana Dolly's writing is very poetic, very lyrical, and she absolutely sucked you in with the emotion. I was in the hairdresser when I was finishing this book, so the last part of this book I was listening to while I was having my hair done, and I was constantly trying to stop myself from crying in public because it was so emotional. But I'm glad I pushed through and persevered with this story, and we've got to the other side, because I think now we can start with Nova's story and move on from there. I don't know where Giana Dolly's going to take this plot, because it feels to me that it's kind of like the first stage of this storyline has now been wrapped up. You know, we've confronted the police force, we've fended off a couple of other you know, biker groups, and you know, by the end of this book we've kind of, I feel like the chapter is closed. Giana Dolly's done a good job of kind of wrapping some things up, and we also got a really nice extended bonus scene where, you know, we see the family much further in the future and we kind of know that they're okay, so that makes us feel good. But I have no idea what's going to happen in the next part, and I know there's obviously the latest book has just come out, which I think is book 7, and so and Giana said that there's much more life in the story yet, so very intrigued to find out what happens next. So I will definitely be picking up the next book in the series at some point. I don't know exactly when. I've got a few books to get through at the end of December and into January, but yeah, as I read it I will report back and let you know how I get on. So anyway, there we go. That is my December wrap up, hopefully shorter than normal because I've only read half the number of books. So if you liked it, as always, please give me a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content from me, and I'll see you very soon. Bye. And it was narrated by Jacob. We'd already seen Chris and Nicolette, who is Michael's, oh no, and I think Rina Kent has done an absolutely amazing job here of challenging, and I think Rina Kent has done some amazing, therefore I was shocked to find that the next book in the series, which is going to be Eli and I think Ava, Eli and Ava's story, is not Ava, what is it, who's it going to be? Who's it gonna be? I should have just trusted myself because it was Eli and Ava in fact. So